What's the scariest story you know of with actual photographic proof? Pato89, 2D. There is the Japanese man that live-streamed his own death when he climbed Mount Fuji off-season. His last words were, "This is very dangerous." In Japanese, of course. Itsuki Fear, 2D. 2 awards. A man took a photo of his family at the exact moment he was gunned down. This happened on New Year's Eve of 2011, and it was very tragic. Not sure if you can consider this scary, but to me, it was and still is. Superjodo, 2D. Helios Flight 522, also called Ghost Flight because of a wrongly turned switch. There was no pressurization. The pilots couldn't identify the problem, and because of hypoxia everyone on the plane except one died. The disturbing thing is that the plane was on autopilot and simply flew to its destination, only stayed at 30,000 feet. The jets were scrambled and took a picture. They reported seeing everyone livelessly, but after 2 hours saw one person entering the cockpit. Vish was a crew member. He tried getting the plane to descend, but after 3 minutes after he entered the cockpit the left engine spun out because of fuel starvation. 7 minutes after that the right engine. Flight data recorded a yoke pull, pitching the plane up, of the maximum amount a human could deliver seconds before impact. The picture taken by the fighter pilots still give the chills. I_armor_Borat. 2D. That one underwater proposal where the guy's girlfriend was in an underwater hotel room and the guy swam outside of it to propose. You could see him struggling, couldn't hold his breath any longer and swam up but never made it to the surface. One of the happiest moments in their lives only to end in tragedy. Dubufeetfak, 2D. Last public execution in Albania. These guys, brothers 24 and 22, killed a family of 4 and the newborn of 7 months, strangled with hands on his crib while sleeping so that it wouldn't grow up and seek revenge. Truly twisted. Their last words were, "I have nothing to say." The judge that ordered the execution lost his mind shortly and became homeless a year after. They were lynched in the middle of one of the most populated cities of Albania, Fier. TLDFR, 2D. Probably Gali building fire in the urban area of Hong Kong during 1996, which took 41 lives. There was TV live that day and there was just one guy who clinged to the window trying to shout for help. But the fire took him and he was burnt to death on live. Later the corpse just kept clinging to the window with fire burning behind him. The mentioned photo. Functatious, 2D. 5-1 award. Probably the Delphi murders where the girls took a photo and recorded audio, video of the killer. Still hasn't been caught. Edit, right link. Effervescent, spleen, 2D. This story and everything about it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I've often wondered just how many awful people just camp out along hiking trails, particularly along remote ones. Just because of the ease of access to extremely vulnerable people and the low likelihood of any interference before they do whatever it is they set out to do. Bygone Gamer, 2D. The Seoul ferry tragedy where the students recorded their final moments, stuck in the sinking ship, their final reactions. Joseph Fritzl, the pictures of the basement where he kept his daughter. Bad Key, 2D. This is a series of photos recovered from the camera of a Canadian couple who died during the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. It shows the water level flowing out from the shore before surging back in. The very idea of a wall of water crashing towards you, completely unstoppable, and you have nowhere to run, nowhere that is safe, is perhaps one of the most terrifying things that could happen to you. By the time one could take these photos, all you can do is watch death march inexorably towards you. 2D. 2 engineers died when the windmill they were working on caught fire. This is the last picture of them alive. King Azul, 2D. Issei Sagawa. He was obsessed with a fellow student while studying in Paris. Her name was Renee Hartevelt and she was of Dutch origin. He invited her over to dinner and proceeded to kill her, rape her corpse, mutilate her, and eat some of her body parts. There are pictures of the gruesome death readily available with a quick Google image search. Worst part? He got out of it because insanity and went back to Japan, where, for a while, he became a pseudo-celebrity and was invited onto shows to tell the story. He was not allowed to attend the funerals of his parents. Start, 17 April 21, 2D. Was declared insane, was committed to a French institution. They decide to deport him to Tokyo, where he was immediately committed to a mental health unit who all declared him sane. Because the French police sealed the documents and didn't charge him after the declaration of insanity, and Tokyo psychologists all found him to be sane. He got to walk. Guy literally recounts his tale about how he did and never got a fair punishment for it. S77, 2D. The file photo of Regina K. Walters, who ran away from home with her boyfriend, and they were picked up and murdered by a serial killer. 2D. Hinterkaifeck. On a small farm in Germany in 1922, someone brutally murdered the entire family and their maid, then lived in the house for days after. The killer lured family members to the attic one by one. The daughter was murdered in the barn with a pickaxe, and evidence shows she stayed alive in agony for hours. The father had reported hearing footsteps in the attic in the days leading up to the killings, but could find no one. He also saw footprints in the snow leading to the machine room, where the lock was broken. It took 4 days for the bodies to be discovered, in which time people reported seeing and smelling smoke from the fireplace. The smell was disgusting. It's unknown what was being burned. The previous family maid had quit 6 months before the killings, citing sounds in the attic and claiming the place was haunted. 6 months. To this day, there has been nothing close to a conclusive end to the story. It still haunts me. There are pictures of the bodies online if you look for them. Gruesome stuff. Salt Revolutionary 917, 2D. I mean, for fear of sounding like a broken record, I would very much not like to be on a prisoner train bound for a Mongolsplaso concentration camp circa 1943. Dude would straight up pick off random prisoners from his office window, or sick his 2 specially trained dogs on prisoners to tear them limb from limb. Fucking sicko. M. Ben Smith, 77. 2D. He was removed from his position by the SS due to, among other crimes, mistreatment of prisoners. Just think about that for a moment. How much of a monster do you have to be to have the fucking SS say you have gone too far? He was captured and executed for his crimes after the war. Granted a quick death, he denied so many of his victims. Gave the usual just following orders excuse, of course, and his last words were "Heil Hitler." Ruby Angel, 2D. Late to the party, but I was fascinated and later bothered with the concept of dead bodies being markers on Mount Everest. Some bodies have been there for decades and it's more dangerous to try to bring someone to the camp, so they're just left there to die. It's just sad how climbing Everest has now become an exotic, thrilling sports activity for people who could afford to pay all fees involved, as well as hire people to bring their tools even if they aren't well equipped to do so. Soka Okami, 2D. The honor killing of Mona Haydari. Her husband chased her across the country, Iran, before killing her, decapitating her body and walking around smiling with a knife in his right hand and her head in his left. Kevin Cove, 2D. 1 award. People always talk about serial killers or rapists in these threads, people that act against or tangential to the system. But there's something optimistic about those stories, because the implication is that if the system had the information to identify the offender, they would be brought to justice. What happens when abuse is an intentional act committed by the system? Who do you turn to for safety? Allow me to introduce. Father stares at the hand and foot of his 5-year-old, severed as a punishment for failing to make the daily rubber quota, Belgian Congo, 1904. I don't smoke heroin, 2D. Nothing is worse than real life. And in real life a lot of the pedophiles out there know of this fucking guy and the atrocities he's committed. Given the nature of his crimes and the fact that he recorded shit himself, I'd say he's real life true detective, what with evidence somehow being destroyed in fires. Private account 84, 2D. There are a few pictures of Dahmer's apartment, inside of which they found 4 human heads, 7 human skulls, 2 full human skeletons, 3 human torsos in a drum of acid, 2 human hearts. Camp_Express, 2D. 7 awards. I'm going to hell for reading this as the 12 Days of Christmas, I fucking know it. Mimod Zarif, 2D. Please read the story and even this comment at your own risk. Couldn't sleep for a good few days after reading this absolute horror story, and this one will haunt me forever. So here goes. The story of Junko Furuta, or better known as 44 Days of Hell. And I assure you the story certainly does live up to its name. It's a seriously effed up story about a 16-year-old teenage girl, who was tortured in so many disgusting ways for 44 days straight by 3 to 4 other teenagers from her school. The tortures include raping her over 500 times, beating her with a steel rod after being hung from above, inserting burning hot rods in her vagina, setting her pubes on fire, among many other unspeakable deeds. She was fed cockroaches and later starved. She couldn't digest her food due to her ruptured stomach resulting from the beatings. She couldn't see from one of her eyes and couldn't breathe from one of her nostrils due to the blood clot from the beatings. She also had to drink her own urine later on. It got so bad that she had to crawl everywhere as she couldn't stand up straight. She begged for mercy and later begged them to kill her so she doesn't have to suffer, but they continued their horrible tortures. They finally set her on fire and killed her later on. As if that wasn't enough, they put her in a barrel and filled it with cement, which was only found 2 whole months later. And what's more was, the teenagers who were later caught just received 25 or so years with chance of parole. Because they were teenagers. In fact, they've been out for quite a while now, over a decade, as some of you've pointed out. Also, their families kicked Junko's grave and even spit on it. How they did all these horrible things as teenagers and how their families even supported them is beyond me. Yeah, it's pretty f***ed up if you ask me. This one proves that reality can in fact be stranger than fiction, and not in a good way either. No stress account, 2D. Few years ago a student walking home was mugged and stabbed to death, and it was caught on security camera. The stabbing was bad enough, but what was even more tragic, infuriating, was that the victim tried to flag down passing cars for help, but not a single one stopped. Eventually he collapsed and died. Edit, y'all justifying not stopping to help is why this shit is scary. Illogical futurity. 2D. There's a picture, of a couple jumping off a bridge in a suicide pact. It was in China and the person who took the photos didn't even notice until he checked them later.
Thank you guys for watching, and please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know if you want more content like this in the future.